أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد أشرف الخلق وسيد المرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا سهلا. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. اللهم أخرجنا من ظلمات الوهم إلى نور الفهم وأكرمنا بمعرفة العلم وزين أخلاقنا بالحلم يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم أصلح أحوالنا واغفر ذنوبنا واستر عيوبنا. اللهم اختم بالباقيات الصالحات أعمالنا. اللهم حقق خلاصنا من كل سوء ومكروه أنت به عليم. بارك اللهم لنا في أرزاقنا وفي أعمارنا وفي أعمالنا. اللهم حبب إلينا الإيمان وزينه في قلوبنا وكره إلينا الكفر والفسوق والعصيان واجعلنا من عبادك الراشدين. اللهم ما كان بيننا وبينك فتجاوز عنه وما كان بيننا وبين خلقك فتحمله عنا برحمتك وكرمك يا أكرم الأكرمين. اللهم أصلح أحوال المسلمين والمسلمات في كل مكان يا رب العالمين. فك الكرب عن كل مستضعف من أمة حبيبك محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم أنت به عليم. اللهم فك الكرب عن إخواننا المستضعفين في غزة وفي فلسطين. انصرهم نصرا عزيزا مؤزرا. اللهم انصرهم على القوم الظالمين. اللهم انصرهم على القوم الظالمين. اللهم عليك بمن اعتدى على حرماتهم. اللهم عليك بمن اعتدى عليهم وانتهك حرماتهم يا رب العالمين. اللهم انصرهم نصرا عزيزا مؤزرا. ثبت أقدامهم واربط على قلوبهم. أمددهم بمدد من عندك يا رب العالمين. اللهم انصرهم بجند من جندك. اللهم عجل بزوال الظالمين. اللهم عجل بزوال الظالمين. اللهم عجل بزوال الظالمين. اللهم اهزمهم وزلزلهم يا رب العالمين. وأبرم لأمة محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم إبرام رشد يعز فيه أهل طاعتك ويحكم فيه بشريعتك يا رب. آمين آمين. وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين. أما بعد, Jazakumullah khair for attending for today. Today we're going to be going over the chapter on Yaqeen and Tawakkul, Babul Yaqeen wa Tawakkul. Yaqeen translated as certainty, Tawakkul translated as trust in Allah. These two concepts are very critical for the believer, very critical for the mu'min. They play into everything we deal with as believers. And this is the last session that we're going to be having. We're going to take a 2-month break. For July and for August, we won't be having classes just because the nature of summer, people are traveling, people are busy, they're spending time with their families and so on and so forth. So in the interest of consistency, so that we don't have people who are able to attend one time and not attend another time and so on and so forth, we're just going to pause it. And in mid-September, when people get back to schools and their routines, we'll be resuming, inshallah. So this chapter, like all the other chapters in this blessed book, Gardens of the Righteous, starts off with ayat, and then it's followed by a hadith. If you're following in the book that we have, the book has it on page 52. But it dedicates the entire lesson to tawakkul. And he translated it as reliance upon Allah. Trust in Allah, reliance upon Allah, they're close. He says, Darsun fit tawakkuli ala Allahi azza wa jal. I'm going to share with you the verses, and then we'll go into the hadith. The first verse that's mentioned in the original Riyadh as-Saliheen is from Surah Al-Ahzab. Surah Al-Ahzab, we were reciting it in Salat al-Maghrib, is a very powerful surah that teaches us about one of the very contentious moments in the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ, when the emotions were high, Medina was sieged, and the hypocrites were struck by terror, and Allah articulates to us how they operated in such a circumstance. So the verses in Surah Al-Ahzab teach us about emotional reactions to when all the odds were stacked up against the believers and the believing community. We have the emotional reaction of believers, and then we have the emotional reactions of the hypocrites. The hypocrites, they're mentioned in the verse that we recited in Salah. وَإِذْ يَقُولُ الْمُنَافِقُونَ وَالَّذِينَ فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ مَرَضٌ غَرَّ هَؤُلَاءِ دِينُهُمْ وإذ يقول المنافقون والذين في قلوبهم مرض ما وعدنا الله ورسوله إلا غرورا. Right? وإذ قالت طائفة منهم يا أهل يثرب لا مقام لكم فارجعوا ويستأذن فريق منهم النبي يقولون إن بيوتنا عورة وما هي بعورة إن يريدون إلا فرارا. Allah Azza wa Jal tells us about the hypocrite mindset. These verses are not in front of you, but in the surah, in the very beginning of Surah Al-Ahzab, Allah tells us that the hypocrites and those who have diseases in their hearts, when they saw the Confederates conjoin upon Medina, they said all of the promises Allah and His Prophet gave us were false. And they tried to come up with any excuse to run away from the battlefield. They said, إِن يُرِيدُونَ إِلَّا فِرَارًا. Right? They said, إِنَّ بُيُوتَنَا عَوْرًا. Oh, we got to go protect our homes. Our homes are exposed and vulnerable. Just please, let us run away from here. We don't want to be in this situation next to you. Right? So, and then on the other hand, and this is the first verse that tells us about Yaqeen Tawakkul. The believers, their attitude is stated in verse 22 of Surah Al-Ahzab. It says, وَلَمَّا رَأَى الْمُؤْمِنُونَ الْأَحْزَابَ قَالُوا هَذَا مَا وَعَدَنَا اللَّهُ وَرَسُولُهُ وَصَدَقَ اللَّهُ وَرَسُولُهُ وَمَا زَادَهُمْ إِلَّا إِيمَانًا وَتَسْلِيمًا. So the believers, when they saw the Confederates conjoin upon Medina, they had a completely different mindset. They said, this is exactly what Allah and His Prophet promised us. This is exactly what my iman prepared me for. And Allah and His Prophet were truthful, and they increased in iman and submission. That's the attitude. SubhanAllah, and what this brings to mind is Yaqeen and Tawakkul as two very foundational spiritual concepts come to the believer's refuge in the most difficult times in our lives. There's no way I as a believer could manage difficulties and trials without having a good dose of yaqeen, certainty in Allah, and a good dose of trust in Allah to deal with it. That's basically what it is. These are the believer's zad provisions for the difficult journey of life. That's what yaqeen and tawakkul are. You know, there's no way a mu'min could hack life without having these two characteristics. There's no way I could hack it. I'm going to fail and fail miserably. If I'm someone who's plagued by insecurities of the unknown. And you know what? That's exactly what the shaitan plays on. He preys upon those who have a deficiency in these two spiritual characteristics. Look at this. There's a verse in Surah Al-Nahl. I think it's verse 101 or 102, something like that. It says, Allah Azza wa Jal says, إِنَّهُ لَيْسَ لَهُ سُلْطَانٌ عَلَى الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَلَى رَبِّهِمْ يَتَوَكَّلُونَ. The shaitan has no dominion and no authority or power over a person who has iman, and out of all characteristics, a person who has tawakkul. Why? Because shaitan's entire approach is founded upon lack of tawakkul, insecurities, doubts, right? Triggering fears, right? Ash-shaytanu ya'idukum al-faqr. Shaitan promises poverty. And he commands you to engage in obscenity. That's what the shaitan comes to the person, makes him think of the past, and he's going to say, what? Allah's not going to forgive me. Think of the future. Oh, it's all hopeless. There's no way I could figure I'm doomed. There's no way it's going to get better from here. Think of the present and make you have every anxiety in the book about your current reality, right? That's how the shaitan does it. Shaitan does not want us to be a people who have this positive, this proactive, this himma-driven, this thirst-driven drive, this thirst-driven approach to life. He doesn't want us to have that. Shaitan wants me to feel weakness, wants me to feel disabled, wants me to feel despair. You see, everything, and I'm telling you this, that's why one of his names is referred to as Al-Gharur, the oft-deceiving one. Most of the shaitan's efforts are, and you should magnify it, because it summarizes the nature of the struggle. Most of the efforts of the shaitan are directed to diluting perception. Most of the shaitan's efforts are geared towards diluting perceptions. I'm going to have a bad assumption of Allah. I'm going to have a bad assumption of people. I'm going to have a very bad opinion of my own self, and I'm going to self-loathe. And I'm going to have this destructive approach to all of my problems in my life. That's what the shaitan wants. And the healing force for all of this is called Yaqeen and Tawakkul. That's why these, why are they joined together? They're two different concepts. Yaqeen is, Yaqeen is for me to have no doubt, full certainty. My heart's not shook in what Allah could do and what Allah has and what Allah has prepared. That's what yaqeen is. Tawakkul is having trust in Allah. Why are they joined? Is there a relationship between yaqeen and tawakkul? Think with me deeply. Is there a relationship between yaqeen and tawakkul? Let's say the translation of tawakkul is trust in Allah, right? What would you say that link is between the two concepts? What would you say? Anyone want to share something? So if you have full trust in Allah, you're going to be content, right? Okay. So that's good. It's a good point. But I want to ask you to think a little further. What makes you trust Allah? Answer that question. What makes you trust Allah? No, we're saying the tawakkul means trust in Allah. So what makes you trust Him? Yaqeen? You're getting somewhere. Yaqeen in what? What does it mean to have yaqeen in Allah?
Your iman and your faith in God. God sets your path and your goals and your challenges in life.
Okay.
And your struggles. It's all a test throughout your life.
It's true. It's true. All right. I want to give you an example before you share something with me. Imagine this is the first day you see me in your life. You know nothing about me. You don't even know what I do. You don't even know my name. I just told you my name right now. Just by that, are you going to trust me? You don't know anything about me. First time you ever see me in your life. Are you going to trust me? What makes you trust me? Knowing me. How are you going to get to know me? You're going to need to experience things with me, right? You're going to need to have a conversation with me and see, oh wow, he understands things. You're going to need to deal with a conflict and see, oh wow, he's a caring person. Oh, he's someone I could rely on. Oh, he's someone who actually empathizes. You need to experience things with a person to build a sense of trust. So here's the punchline. How can you trust him if you don't know him? So you see, what's the link between yaqeen and tawakkul? إذا سيستقر في قلبي اليقين بالله عز وجل فلا بد أن أعرفه. I need to know Allah to have yaqeen in Him. I need to know His names and attributes. I need to reflect deeply on His fi'l and His actions. I need to know what He's done for me in my life and what He does with His creation. I need to understand this very well. Meaning, the more I'm aware of Allah, the more that will naturally translate to trust, right? Because khalas, I have this special relationship. I know my Rabb. I know that my Rabb is Rahim. I know that my Rabb is Kareem. I know that my Rabb is Sami' al-Du'a. He answers the prayers, He is generous, He is merciful. That's where I want to go to. Like imagine this, I want to put it another way. Imagine you just suffered the most devastating loss in your life. And you just feel like you need to go somewhere. Who's going to come to the top of your mind immediately? Well, we would hope Allah, but who's going to come to the top of your mind? The one you trust most. Oh man, I just need to go to Fulan, I need to go Fulana, I need to talk to them right now. I just don't know how to process what just happened. It's just too difficult for me, right? Why? Because I trust this person. Now, imagine if I had that type of relationship with Allah Azza wa Jal, the one who loves Al-Wadud, the one who loves His creation, right? That's why you know what the Quran says? أَمْ لَمْ يَعْرِفُوا رَسُولَهُمْ فَهُمْ لَهُ مُنْكِرُونَ. Or is it that they do not know their Prophet and hence they reject him? You know what leads to loving the Prophet? Knowing about him. The more I know his life, his seerah, his characteristics, I'm gonna be inclined to him, right? So this is why yaqeen and tawakkul go hand in hand. If I know Allah and have yaqeen in Him, then I will trust in Him. You see, this is the strong link between, and then everything else you said is all at play. Yeah, you'll be content, and yes, you'll realize that He's planning for you, and that He's going to facilitate everything for you. All of this is coming by virtue of you knowing Him, i.e. having certainty in Him. Al-Yaqeen billah. That's why one of the most powerful things, right, that you could possibly have in your corner whenever you're dealing with something difficult in life is having Al-Yaqeen billahi azza wa jal. Having this strong sense of conviction. I know my Rabb is going to take care of it. Right? You wanted to say something, brother? Okay. Khair, inshallah. All right, let's go over the next verse. This one's in your book. Page 52. It says, الَّذِينَ قَالَ لَهُمُ النَّاسِ إِنَّ النَّاسَ قَدْ جَمَعُوا لَكُمْ فَاخْشَوْهُمْ فَزَادَهُمْ إِيمَانًا وَقَالُوا حَسْبُنَا اللَّهُ وَنِعْمَ الْوَكِيلُ فَانْقَلَبُوا بِنِعْمَةٍ مِّنَ اللَّهِ وَفَضْلٍ لَمْ يَمْسَسْهُمْ سُوءٌ وَاتَّبَعُوا رِضْوَانَ اللَّهِ وَاللَّهُ ذُو فَضْلٍ عَظِيمٍ. Right, this is telling us about one of the very powerful verses in the Quran, describing the disposition of the companions who were beaten and bruised in Uhud. And when Allah called them to action and the Prophet called them to action, they immediately responded. Right? What does it say? Those to whom the people said, truly the people have gathered against you. Everything stacked up against you. Fear them! Right? It only increased them in faith. What did they say? Hasbunallah. Allah is sufficient for us and He's the best disposer of our affairs. Because of this yaqeen, they return with blessings and bounty from Allah without any harm touching them. And they sought the pleasure of Allah, and Allah is in possession of great bounty. Ya Allah. It's a beautiful verse. Hasbunallahu wa ni'mal wakeel. Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam said this as he was being thrown into the fire. Right? Our beloved Prophet ﷺ said this as well. And we're as an ummah taught to say this in the most difficult times in our lives. Say it. This is how you gain a sense of tawakkul. How do I affirm tawakkul in my heart? Right? Someone asked this question. All right, I want to have trust in Allah. How do I make this firm in my heart? What do I say? Say this to yourself. Whenever you feel your will is shaky, a lot of anxieties, just keep on saying to yourself, Hasbunallahu wa ni'mal wakeel. Hasbunallahu wa ni'mal wakeel. I'm looking at what's happening around the world today, and I'm seeing our brothers and sisters in Gaza oppressed the way they're oppressed, and all of the odds are stacked up against them. What am I going to say? Hasbunallahu wa ni'mal wakeel. Hasbunallahu wa ni'mal wakeel will bring armies to their knees. Right? I'm going through medical issues, health issues, and I'm just in a lot of pain and uncertainty. What am I going to say? I need to. It's a real thing, by the way. You know, if you go to the people who, self-help and people who do therapy and stuff like that, they'll tell you need to do this like self-affirmation, right? You need to tell yourself, oh, you're good. It's gonna be okay, right? How do believers do self-affirmation? How do they do that? Hasbunallahu wa ni'mal wakeel. I need to say it to myself 100 times in the morning, 100 times at night. I need to say these words. These are words. These are the best forms of self-affirmation, right? I'm going to be okay. Hasbunallahu wa ni'mal wakeel. right? Think of all the problems. What do you say? Whenever you think of the, something, a fitna, and something that is brewing, and you feel afraid, whenever you feel afraid by someone or something, or in an area, what do you say? Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Allah is greatest, right? It'll quell the fears. It'll make the fears go away. Allahu Akbar. It'll make the fears go away, right? So actually the believer becomes very strong with the repetition of these adhkar on the tongue. That Allah's going to, no, I am not someone who's easily shook by the shaitan, right? That's why these verses are critical. And then he shares with us many other verses here, sharing them briefly. He says, وَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى الْحَيِّ الَّذِي لَا يَمُوتُ, and put your trust in the ever-living one who dies not. Right? This gives us, you take a principle from this. All right. So again, so far, again, like we said, there's a thoughtful and deliberate presentation of these verses. The first verse, Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakeel, what is he teaching us there? When the odds are stacked up against you, the believer finds empowerment in saying these words. Allah is enough for us, He's the disposer of our affairs. The first verse that we read from Al-Ahzab, the principle is, it gives us a matter of perception, right? The believers, when they saw the great challenge that awaited them in Al-Ahzab, because they perceived things through the lens of tawakkul, they said, what? هَذَا مَا وَعَدَنَا اللَّهُ وَرَسُولُهُ. So trust in Allah and yaqeen actually alter perceptions of difficult things, right? Meaning that a large part of difficulties and trials in life is a product of perception. I'm going to say that again. So the first verse that we mentioned from Surah Al-Ahzab gives us a comparison. This is how the hypocrites saw it. This is how the believers saw it. A large chunk of the difficulties and challenges we deal in life are products of perception. Meaning, it's here. It's not in reality. Meaning that even if it was truly, in reality, as big as the size of the highest mountain, if my perception doesn't see it like that, if I'm able to minimize the difficulty, then guess what? You'll find that I'll be able to, break down even the biggest mountain that is in front of me. Again, it's amazing how things play out like that. You find someone, smallest, most trivial things in life completely disables them. Had a bad cup of coffee in the morning, my day is ruined. I'm going to be grumpy and grouchy, and I'm not going to be able to function. Why? Because I didn't have a good cup of coffee, right? Where on the other hand, because of perception, that young boy in Gaza is able to look at the tank right in front of him and run right past it and not give a hoot, right? About the tank. The millions of dollars that have been put into constructing this tank that's supposed to be indestructible will appear totally flimsy in the eyes of someone who has nothing. Right? It's amazing. So the first principle, perception plays into reality more than we think. Right? The second verse that we went over again, the believer is empowered by the words Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakeel, the greatest words of self-affirmation. The third verse that he gives us here, why should I trust in Allah more than anyone else? Because Allah never diminishes, never dies, never sleeps, and everyone else dies, everyone else forgets, everyone else it loses sight of things. So when I'm going to put my trust in people, what am I going to do? I'm setting myself up for failure. When I'm putting all of my cards, it doesn't mean don't trust people. It's not meant to, no. Have trust in people where it's reasonable to have trust in them. But when you put all of your entire deck in the corner of where people are at, then you're setting yourself up for disheartenment, right? Because if you put it with Allah, then Allah will never fail you. That's how the believer looks at it. So that's the third verse. The fourth verse, he says, for you on page 52, وَعَلَى اللَّهِ فَلْيَتَوَكَّلِ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ. And in Allah, let the believers put their trust. What's the principle you get from that verse? That tawakkul is synonymous with iman. Meaning that there's no way iman, faith, could exist in the hearts if there is no sense of tawakkul. Meaning, if I have zero trust in Allah, that means I don't really believe in Him. That means I don't really recognize that He's Al-Qadir, Al-Qadir, Al-Muqtadir, He's Ar-Rahman, He's Ar-Rahim, He's the one who's all capable, He's the omnipotent. If I have no trust, I don't really believe in Him, right? And then the next verse he shares, فَإِذَا عَزَمْتَ فَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ. Then when you have taken a decision, put your trust in Allah. What is this teaching? This is teaching that when I actually go down a path and follow a certain course of action, I should not allow anxieties to continue to deter me. If all of my mushawara, istikhara and istishara have led me down a certain path, then I need to remove the anxieties from the equation. I'm just going to need to go down the path and try it and have trust in Allah. Meaning what? Tawakkul is enabling. Lack of tawakkul is disabling, right? When you follow a certain course of action, what's going to enable me to continue down it? Tawakkul, right? If a person has no tawakkul, they'll never take a job, they'll never open a business, they'll never get married, they'll never decide to have a child. They will do nothing. If I'm if I'm someone who's trying to do risk management all around and I want to live within this insulated bubble and I never want to go through any hardship in my life, then guess what I'm going to do? I will not live. If I don't want any hardships, that means I'm choosing not to live. All right? I'm going to put myself in this insulated bubble and I'm going to, and even then, hardships are going to find me. Yeah. So, and then he continues. So I want to transition to the hadith now. So he gives us a really, really good dose of ayat, because tawakkul and yaqeen are such celebrated concepts. And now we're going to go transition into the hadith. So the first hadith that he mentions here is the Prophet ﷺ said, and you find this in page 53 in your book, عرضت علي الأمم فرأيت النبي ومعه الرهيط والنبي ومعه الرجل والرجلان والنبي وليس معه أحد إذ رفع لي سواد عظيم فقيل لي هذه أمتك ومعهم 70,000 يدخلون الجنة بغير حساب ولا عذاب ثم نهض فدخل منزله فخاض الناس في أولئك الذين يدخلون الجنة بغير حساب ولا عذاب فقال بعضهم فلعلهم الذين صحبوا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وقال بعضهم فلعلهم الذين ولدوا في الإسلام فلم يشركوا بالله شيئا وذكروا أشياء فخرج رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فقال ما الذي تخوضون فيه فأخبروه فقال هم الذين لا يرقون ولا يسترقون ولا يتطيرون وعلى ربهم يتوكلون فقام عكاش بن محصن فقال ادعوا الله أن يجعلني منهم فقال أنت منهم ثم قام رجل آخر فقال ادعوا الله أن يجعلني منهم فقال سبقك بها عكاشة. Right. So this is a beautiful hadith. I'm going to translate it for you. The translation is actually in front of you if you have the book. The hadith tells us this. I was shown all the nations. I saw a prophet with whom there was a small group. A prophet with whom there was only one or two men, and a prophet with whom there was no one. Meaning there was prophets who came before who did not have big followerships, right? SubhanAllah. So it's not always about the size of the following, right? It's not always about the size of the following. So this is important to keep in mind in the age of social media, right? In the age of social media, people's value is defined by how many followers they have, right? I am a TikTok star and I have 1 million followers. Not me. But I have 1 million followers on TikTok, right? Allahu Akbar. What a great fiat, right? So it's not about that. Sometimes people could be attracted to someone and that person's utterly bankrupt because they're charismatic, because they're connected, because they're able to say funny, catchy things or do things that get attention, and they get hundreds of thousands of followers over nothing, right? And that's to say that, having big followership is something that's intrinsically wrong, but we see that it's not always about the numbers, and we learned this from this hadith, right? So then I was shown a great assemblage, and I thought that they were my ummah. But I was told this is Musa and his people. But look at the horizon. There I saw another great assemblage. I was told this is your ummah. Among them are 70,000 who will enter Jannah without reckoning or punishment. Right? بِغَيْرِ حِسَاب. Who are those people who enter Jannah without hisab? We're going to learn that actually the attribute of tawakkul relates to these people strongly. So then he went inside and they began debating. Some of them said, these 70,000 are probably the companions. Some others said, no, they're probably the people who are born into Islam and they never worshipped an idol, right? And then the Prophet ﷺ came out and clarified. He said, no, it's none of this. He said, they are those who do not perform or seek incantations. I'll explain that. Ruqya, what does that mean? Nor perceive evil omens, tatayyur, but place their trust, tawakkul, in their Lord. One of the companions said, his name was Ukkasha, he said, pray that I'm from them, O Prophet of Allah. And this guy was a smart guy. He knows that the prayers of the Prophet ﷺ are answered. So, the Prophet ﷺ said, you're from them. So then someone else was like, oh man, that's a good idea. Let me do the same. So then the Prophet ﷺ said, Ukkasha beat you to it. Too late. But the point is, that's just a continuation of the hadith. The point is, let's reflect on these characteristics. What is ruqya? And what is tatayyur? And why is tawakkul such a critical factor in these people who enter Jannah without بِغَيْرِ حِسَاب? The scholars have went in detail explaining this. Ruqya, as we use it today, refers to spiritual healing, right? What does spiritual healing mean? You're afflicted by satanic thoughts, you're afflicted by evil eye or envy, you're afflicted by anxiety. All of this, reading certain verses, saying certain adhkar, could be helpful in healing from the effects of these things. That's what we use ruqya as a term today. That's how we use it. However, that's not the only reference to the term. Now, of course, this hadith is not speaking about that, because those things are beautiful things. They're great things. If you're feeling ill, no, we should seek healing from the Quran, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فِيهِ شِفَاءٌ لِلنَّاسِ, right? In the Quran, there is a source of healing for people, right? يَا أَيُّهَا النَّاسُ قَدْ جَاءَتْكُمْ مَوْعِظَةٌ مِّن رَبِّكُمْ وَشِفَاءٌ لِمَا فِي الصُّدُورِ. There has come to you a reminder from your Lord and a healing for what's in your chest. So if I have anxiety, I should seek healing from the Quran. That ruqya, there's nothing wrong with it at all. Of course not. So what does this ruqya refer to? One interpretation, this is referring to, and that's why he translated it here as they perform or seek incantations. What is that? One interpretation is this is referring to the practice, the pre-Islamic practice where they would go to the idols. Right? We're going to go to the false gods. We're going to say a few words, right? We're going to, I'm going to get a scented candle, and I'm going to make it smoke. I'm going to put that all over you, and the smoke from this is going to protect you, right? I'm gonna burn maramiya in the house so it can make the shayateen run away, right? Because the shayateen I like maramiya, put it in tea, makes it taste good, right? But the shayateen hate maramiya. But the point is, one interpretation is this is referring to going to the false gods and false deities, seeking their assistance, or going to anything that Allah hasn't sanctioned to seek healing from. It wasn't something a guidance that Allah gave us from. This is one interpretation. Another interpretation says Ultimately, these two characteristics, perceiving the evil omens or the incantations, right? These are all things that lack tawakkul, right? They lack tawakkul. And ultimately, the people who are going to enter Jannah are a people without reckoning, are a people of supreme tawakkul. Now, what are signs of weakness in tawakkul, right? A'udhu billah, someone, I just got a new car, I'm going to mention it to someone, what I'm going to do? I'm going to do this. Yeah, what is this? You're going to knock on wood, right, to protect my car? Knock on wood, that's going to protect my car. Is Allah going to protect the car or me knocking on the wood? I'm going to, I'm going to buy this 99-cent trinket with a blue eye to push away hasad, and I'm going to put it on my chest, or I'm going to put it in my house somewhere. The little trinket that I bought from some sidewalk, store, whatever, is going to protect me. That's what's going to protect me. I need to get the blue eye to protect me. This is jahl. This is so ignorant, so lacking of tawakkul. But now let's bring more practical. How does this apply to medication? What's the ruling of seeking medication in Islam? Hukm al-tadawi. This is actually a very, detailed subject. It's actually something that, has a lot of legal back and forth. Habibi, please just come down. Has a lot of legal back and forth between the scholars. You would think it's a no-brainer, right? Oh, of course, you should take medication. End of story, right? But why is there this detail? Why is there this detail? So first off, relating to tawakkul, what we learn is I never put my trust in the medicine or the maker of the medicine. I put it in Allah Azza wa Jal. And the doctor is not going to save me from this cancer that I'm dealing with. The medicine is not going to heal me from this very dangerous illness that I contracted. It's Allah. Allah is the healer. He is a shafi. So having tawakkul would mean what? I'm going to follow proper procedure and precaution. Yeah, I'll go to the doctor. Yeah, I'll take the medicine. But my heart's not relying on that. I realize that I could take all the medication in the world. If Allah doesn't want me to heal, I won't heal. Doesn't mean I won't take medicine. No, I'll take medicine when I should take medicine. But I ultimately realize Allah is the one who makes the medicine effective or having no effectivity at all. Right? That's how it all relates to tawakkul. Now about what's the ruling of tadawi? Well, it depends what you're talking about. Are you talking about something that just masks the pain, like pain medication? Would you ever think that taking pain medication is required? Like some people, they have an issue with taking too much pain medication because of different things, right? Is it required, shar'an, to take a pain medication if I have a headache? The answer is, of course not. Why? I don't have to. If I really want to be patient and not take the Tylenol, then go ahead. Don't take the Tylenol if it's just for pain medication. All right, what if it is something that actually medicates, heals me from something, heals me from a certain type of illness? The answer is, if it will certainly heal me from it, then I have to take the medicine, 100% certainty. However, if it's sort of in the air, then it's going to be a judgment call. It's not going to be a requirement. Maybe perhaps it would. So if I have a medicine that it will more than likely heal me, but not 100%, like whatever, 60% chance based on statistics or 70% chance, then it's recommended that I take it, right? If it's 100%, then it's going to be required, right? If it's something that's experimental, and where does this help you most? With those people who have like terminal illnesses, they'll say, okay, there's this experimental drug that you could take that might help with your cancer. Do I have to take that medication if I have that? The answer is you don't. Because sometimes people in certain situations, they're looking at it through a different lens. Why do I have to prolong my suffering? Why do I have to put myself through all kinds of pain? I don't want to have to deal with that, right? Am I required to take all medicine that the doctors give me if there's no evidence that it'll actually cure me, the answer is no. It's going to be a judgment call. If I want to take it, I can take it. If I don't want to take it, there's nothing that's going to require me, because there's nothing to prove that it'll heal me. But if it will certainly heal me, no, then you have to take it. You have to preserve your life. That's different. So this is where that issue is addressed. But anyway, the beautiful takeaway from this hadith is the most honorable entrance into Jannah you could possibly think of is entering Jannah without any accountability. Imagine that. Just like, go ahead. You're not even going to have to wait. We're not even going to ask you a single thing. Go right in. That's a big honor. What made them get this honor? They have this supreme tawakkul on Allah. That's ultimately what we learn from this hadith. Everyone good on that hadith? There is, before I move on from it, since I know there's a detailed hadith, does anyone have any comments or questions about that specific hadith? Go ahead. Like therapy or physical? Is it required? Is it okay? Of course. Now seeking therapy is something that is extremely useful. You definitely should not. So look, by the way, we don't have to take the sword of requirement to try to get things done with everything, right? Just because something's not required doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. You know, therapy could really change your life around and could save you from all kinds of heartache, right? Bottling in all your emotions could be a recipe for disaster for everything, for your work, for your family, for your relationships. You don't want to bottle those things in, of course. No, you absolutely should do it, right? But am I going to say, if you don't go to therapy, you are sinful? It depends. It depends. What are the consequences of person X, particularly, not going to therapy? If this person not going to therapy will lead to the loss of rights with certainty, this person, because they're not getting their problems addressed, they're going to be negligent as a parent, they're going to be transgressive as a spouse, and it's going to cause all kinds of zulm and oppression. Meaning that if therapy becomes the only means for this person to not oppress other human beings, then we're going to say, yeah, if you don't address this, either through therapy or spiritual counseling or something, you're going to be sinful and liable before Allah. You get it? No, of course it doesn't. So this is a good question. So this is what we want to re-emphasize. If you go to therapy for anxiety or something like that, does that mean you don't have tawakkul? The answer, absolutely not, right? If you take medication, does that mean you don't have tawakkul? No, absolutely not. You can have very good tawakkul, because part of tawakkul is me actually following through, right? فَإِذَا عَزَمْتَ فَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ. It should be enabling me to engage in certain behaviors that will actually change my situation. If part of that is taking medicine, talking to people, then that's part of tawakkul. That's not against tawakkul, right? So no. Don't understand that at all. But I'm not going to bank everything on it. I'm not going to remove Allah from the equation. I'm going to go to therapy, go to the doctor, praying that Allah opens the doors for me. That's how I'm going to do it. You get it? So it's just shifting the attitude on that thing. Wallahu a'lam. Good? Any other comments or questions? No, we don't use the word exaggeration. Actually, there's an. So is this just pointing لبيان الكثرة, or is it an actual number? So there's actually another hadith that gives an even higher number. There's another hadith that tells us there's 70,000 who will enter with each one, 70,000 more that will enter Jannah without accountability. So instead of the total being 70,000, you got to do the math. You're going to do 70,000 with each 70,000, another 70,000. So you're going to need to put it like to the power of 2 or something like that to get the actual number. I forgot what it was, right? I think it's certain number of millions, a few million, that'll actually enter Jannah without accountability. So the scholars, the way they interpret it is since there's such specification, they take it as an actual number. That's how I've seen it presented. Yeah, wallahu alam. Any other questions? Any other questions? Comments? We're good? Alhamdulillah. By the way, I also want to just add another thing. Sometimes, all right, this is an important subject here. Now, some people might have mental health struggles, right? They have mental health struggles, like they are diagnosed with depression, for example. Everything is okay in their life. There's nothing wrong, but there's some chemical imbalance in their body that makes them depressed by their circumstance. Everything's good, but for some reason they just, I don't know. There's something, in their responses to things, they just feel down and depressed. They have clinical depression. They have clinical depression. There's day-to-day depression that people get due to their circumstances, and then there's clinical depression that has nothing to do with circumstance. If someone has depression, does that mean they don't have tawakkul in their heart? You need to dispel this notion from the mind. A lot of people think that. And when they see someone who has depression, they're like, oh, this person, what are you doing, man? Why you just need to have tawakkul ala Allah. What is this medication you're taking? Tawakkul ala Allah. You just have tawakkul, right? Your iman's weak if you have this depression. The answer is no, that's not the case. You can't say that. Now, whether or not they should take medication or not, that's a different discussion. But does having this mental health struggle mean the person doesn't have tawakkul? The answer is no, right? That's not the case. Allah tests people with certain things in their life, and sometimes there's no solution for it. It reminds me of that woman who came to the Prophet ﷺ, and she said to him, Ya Rasulullah, inni usra' wa atakashaf. Right? So she came to the Prophet ﷺ, and she said to him, O Prophet of Allah, I experience these seizures. Either she had epilepsy or it's from some other spiritual causes like some of the other narrations mention. But the point is she would get seizures. And it would disturb her because during these seizures she would lose control and a part of her body would become exposed. So she said, make dua for me that I don't get these seizures anymore. So he said to her, in shi'ti sabarti walakil jannah. If you want, be patient and you will get Jannah because of this seizure that you're dealing with all the time. So then she said to him, I'll be patient. But pray that I don't get exposed when these seizures happen. So the Prophet ﷺ made this dua for her, and the Prophet ﷺ's prayers were answered. So when she would get these seizures, it would no longer be to the severity where it would expose her body. Sometimes people are tested and plagued with things that don't have solutions. Like you could try all you want, there's no solution to this problem, but this person, if he actually is patient with it, this will be their ticket to Jannah. There is that reality. Well, we ask Allah Azza wa Jal to help people and help us all. Allahumma ameen. So there's another hadith that is mentioned on page 54 by you guys. The Prophet ﷺ would make the following dua. He would say, Allahumma laka aslamt, wa bika amant, wa alayka tawakkalt, wa ilayka anabt, wa bika khasamt. Allahumma a'udhu bi'izzatika, la ilaha illa anta an tudillani anta al-hayy, al-qayyum alladhi la yamut, wal-jinnu wal-insu yamutun. Right, so this is a beautiful dua that we learned from the Prophet ﷺ. What does the dua say? O Allah, I have submitted to you. I have faith in you. I place my trust in you. I turn to you. I have argued for you. O Allah, I have argued for you. What does that mean? Meaning that I stand up for my deen. Like, if anyone transgresses against Allah or the boundaries of Allah, I argue against that. I fight against that. Right? O Allah, I seek refuge in your might. For there is no God but you, that you do not misguide me. You are the ever-living who never dies, whereas mankind and jinn all die. Right? So this is, these words are all like, again, like the tawakkul is the, when you talk about trust in Allah, and you're talking about yaqeen billah, you're talking about this very intimate relationship that the creation has with the Creator. And this is articulated in this beautiful dua. There's nothing that soothes the heart of the believer like having this intimate relationship with the Khaliq. So these words of tawakkul actually soothe the soul, right? So that's something to remember, as tawakkul is a concept. Whatever you're dealing with, if you give your heart a dose of tawakkul, you'll find that it's going to calm down. The anxieties will quell. I'll be able to have a different outlook, a more positive outlook. I'll be able to take a different approach. Tawakkul heals a whole lot. Tawakkul heals a whole lot, brothers and sisters, and that's what we learn from this dua of the Prophet ﷺ. And this is what he says here: it is an obligation upon believers that they put their trust in Allah the Most High and seek His protection. This is because He is described with characteristics of perfection, kamal. Thus He alone can be relied upon, whereas every created being is powerless and destined for death, and therefore not fit to be relied upon. We are to adopt this dua as a model, incorporating various expressions of good which illustrate true faith and certainty in Allah. Right? So that's that hadith. And then the next hadith, we already described it. It says this. Says حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل قالها إبراهيم حين ألقي في النار وقالها محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم حين قالوا إن الناس قد جمعوا لكم فاخشوهم فزادهم إيمانا. حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل is this phrase of dhikr that captures the attitude of tawakkul. It's a phrase of dhikr. It's a very critical phrase of dhikr. We already described this hadith, so we don't need to spend too much time on it. There's another hadith that says, لو أنكم توكلتم على الله حق توكله لرزقكم كما يرزق الطير تغدو خماصا وتعود بطانا. This hadith says what? If you were to have true tawakkul in Allah, then He'll give you like He gives the birds. It goes out hungry and it comes back with its bellies full. Right? SubhanAllah. And when you think of this hadith and you read it, what does this teach us? What does this teach us? Some people, when you look at it at surface level, you say, what? This hadith says, it seems to be counter strategic planning, right? Because birds go out. They don't do strategic planning. They just go out and they trust that they'll find their food. But is that really the case? No, that's not what the Prophet ﷺ is trying to say. But you see, the birds, they work really hard for their food. They have to travel far distances. That's what the hadith is trying to capture, right? So sometimes the bird just goes out and it finds food and then it comes back home. Should you strategically plan? Is strategic planning against tawakkul? The answer is absolutely not. The Prophet ﷺ was a great strategist, and we learned this from the hijrah, from the period in Mecca and the period in Medina. The Prophet ﷺ was all about strategy. But what we are supposed to think about is how hard working we should be if we're people of true tawakkul. That's what this hadith captures, right? You go out hungry, but you work hard until you find your rizq. You continue to search for it, right? So tawakkul means to be proactive, not to be complacent, right? It's not about complacency. All right, what else do we have about tawakkul? There's this... All right, there's this long hadith. It captures, Yaqeen. It's, I'm going to summarize it for you. It's not in our book here. It captures the concept of yaqeen. Beautiful hadith. كنا مع رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم بذات الرقاع فإذا أتينا على شجرة ضليلة تركناها لرسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فجاء رجل من المشركين وسيف رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم معلق بالشجرة فاخترطه فقال تخافني؟ قال لا. فقال فمن يمنعك مني؟ قال الله. Right? So he said, in another version of the hadith says, من يمنعك مني؟ فقال الله فسقط السيف من يده فأخذ رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم السيف فقال من يمنعك مني؟ فقال كن خير آخذ. فقال تشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأني رسول الله؟ قال لا ولكني أعاهدك ألا أقاتلك ولا أكون مع قوم يقاتلونك. فخلى سبيله فأتى أصحابه فقال جئتكم من عند خير الناس. Ya Allah, beautiful hadith. All right, I'm going to tell you the translation of this hadith now. This hadith tells us what? The companions were with the Prophet ﷺ in an area, and they reached this encampment, right? And they rested there. The Prophet ﷺ hung his sword with its sheath on a tree where his tent was. And as he was in the tent, this man who was a disbeliever came. He took the sword, he took the Prophet ﷺ's sword, and he asked him, are you afraid of me? Right? He has a sword. Are you afraid of me? So the Prophet ﷺ said, no. So he says to him after that, who's going to protect you from me now? The Prophet ﷺ says, Allah. So the Prophet, and this is what the narration is describing, said it with such yaqeen that the man was shook and the sword fell out of his hand. He got so scared by the Prophet ﷺ's yaqeen and his certainty that he dropped the sword. The Prophet ﷺ picked it up and he said, who's going to protect you from me now? So then he said to the Prophet ﷺ, Kun khayra akhidh, please don't punish me now. Please don't punish me. So then the Prophet ﷺ, look at this, it's a beautiful continuation of the hadith. This is for all the fraudulent Islamophobes who tried to paint Islam as this warmongering religion and the Prophet ﷺ as this person who was all about bloodshed. This is all for you guys. I know you guys won't watch this, or even if you watch it, you won't put this clip on your websites, right? Because it doesn't support your agenda, right? So he asked the Prophet ﷺ asked him, do you believe in Allah and me as the Prophet? The man was very honest. He said, no, I don't. What did the Prophet ﷺ do? Did he attack him? Did he hurt him? Did he kill him? No, he didn't. But he said to the Prophet, but I promise not to fight against you or be with anyone who fights against you. So the Prophet ﷺ let him go. And then he went back and he told his friends, I came to you from by the best of people. جِئْتُكُم مِّنْ عِنْدِ خَيْرِ النَّاسِ. That's who the Prophet ﷺ was. Right? So, what's the lesson from this hadith? Yaqeen. All right, so we know how tawakkul describes this very intimate spiritual relationship between creator and creation. Yaqeen, on the other hand, is this attribute that when it's deep within the heart, it creates a sense of spiritual reverence for the person. When someone speaks with true yaqeen billah azza wa jal, this person's words have stronger weight. You see the Prophet, you can imagine the Prophet ﷺ is khairul khalqi ajma'. Sometimes the Prophet ﷺ would speak and his manner of speaking would change the hearts of people. Just his manner of speaking. Why? That which is coming from the heart penetrates the heart. When something is said half-heartedly, it's not like when something is said from a place of iman and submission. It's not the same. It's not the same when someone's actually committed to someone who's actually just saying the words and working through the motions. And that makes all the difference between the likes of the people of Gaza and their enemies. The people of Gaza stand tall because of their yaqeen billah. They're patient, they're resilient, they're persistent. Why? because what drives them is not what drives other people. May Allah Azza wa Jal give us that strength. Allahumma ameen. So that's that hadith. There is a bunch of other hadiths that he mentions in this section. And I'll share some of them with you. We have some more time until Salat al-Isha. We still have some time. So I'll share a few more hadiths with you. The next hadith that we learn from the Prophet ﷺ is something that we should say when we enter our homes. قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم من قال يعني إذا خرج من بيته بسم الله توكلت على الله ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله يقال له هديت وكفيت ووقيت وتنحى عنه الشيطان. This hadith tells us, hey, you know what, when you're leaving your house, say these words. You'll be protected and the shaitan will avoid you. Right? What does it say? Whoever says when he leaves his home, Bismillah, Tawakkaltu ala Allah, Bismillah, in the name of Allah, I put my trust in Allah. وَلَا حَوْلَ وَلَا قُوَّةَ إِلَّا بِاللَّهِ. There's no way in avoiding sin or finding strength in doing goodness except by Allah. It'll be said to him, you've been guided, you've been sufficed, and you've been protected. Hudita wa kufita wa wuqit. You've been guided, sufficed, and protected, and the shaitan will not go near him. So you see the power of tawakkul is in protecting against the shaitan. There's another beautiful hadith that describes the Prophet ﷺ's tawakkul when he was in the cave with Abu Bakr. Right? What does it say here? It says here that during the hijrah, Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala anhu describes نظرت إلى أقدام المشركين ونحن في الغار وهم على رؤوسنا فقلت يا رسول الله لو أن أحدهم نظر تحت قدميه لأبصرنا فقال ما ظنك يا أبا بكر باثنين الله ثالثهما. You see the Prophet ﷺ's yaqeen and tawakkul coming into play here. So Abu Bakr says, as he was in the cave with the Prophet ﷺ, he says, I could see the feet of the mushrikeen when they were at the doorstep of the cave of Thawr, Ghar Thawr. And they're right above our heads. And I said to the Prophet ﷺ, O Prophet of Allah, if any one of them looks at their feet, they would see us. So then the Prophet ﷺ told him, O Abu Bakr, what do you think of two? The third of them is Allah Azza wa Jal, meaning they're both aided by Allah. So that's a beautiful scene of yaqeen and tawakkul from the life of Al-Habib sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. This is the last hadith I'll share with you guys. Last hadith for tonight. عن أنس رضي الله تعالى عنه قال كان أخوان على عهد النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم وكان أحدهما يأتي النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم والآخر يحترف فشكى المحترف أخاه للنبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فقال لعلك ترزق به. It's a beautiful hadith. Like there was two brothers. This hadith says what? There was two brothers at the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. One of them was focused with his time on learning from the Prophet. He was dedicated. He was a student. He was dedicating his time to studying. And he had a brother who was a merchant, a businessman. He was hardworking. And because he was so busy with working, he didn't have the time to go learn as much as he wanted with the Prophet. But he was focused on other things in his life. So he came and he complained to the Prophet ﷺ, I have a brother who's spending a lot of time studying with you, and he's not working. This is causing me financial burdens. Right? So the Prophet ﷺ said to this brother, he said to him, perhaps the source of your blessings is coming because of this other brother. The one that you see as a burden. Perhaps the source of your blessings in your life is the fact that you're helping your brother who's unable to provide for himself because of him dedicating his time to study. This hadith teaches us a bunch of things. لَعَلَّكَ تُرْزَقُ بِهِ. Think of these words deeply. You know, it's one thing to have a capitalist mindset towards life. It's all about crunching numbers and you need to pick up your weight. You know, if you're dead weight, then you're just a liability and need to get you out of the way. You know, like it's just so annoying. Like, why do I have to spend on this and that? And, you know, these people who are, they're takers, not givers, and so on and so forth. But Islam doesn't teach us to have a capitalist mindset. Not at all. Sometimes people, because they have a capitalist mindset, they throw their parents in retirement homes. They get rid of their parents. Why? Well, why am I going to have to carry this burden? Why? It's not fair. I want to buy a big house and have a nice pool and have a nice car. Why should I have to spend on my mother or my father, right? Or something else. Someone's tested with something else. That they have siblings who are impoverished. And because of this, it's just like, so much weight on their shoulders. Like Allah opened up for them tijara and they make a lot of money, but they feel like they have to carry all the weight because everyone's going through a bunch of struggles in their life. Prophet ﷺ told this man, hey, pay attention. Don't think that money is all about the bottom line and the numbers, and it's not all about that. Money is about blessings. Money is about barakah. Perhaps what you're getting in your life, Allah facilitating your affairs, is coming about because of the acts of goodness that you're doing. Don't think that barakah is something you should diminish. The barakah effect is real. The barakah effect is real, right? You should not diminish these causes. Sometimes people would have hundreds of thousands of dollars in their bank account, but they feel so empty with their lives. They feel like their money just goes like that, and they don't even, they're struggling to keep up, right? So that shows us where the barakah effect comes about. So لَعَلَّكَ تُرْزَقُ بِهِ. Islam teaches us to feel, and there's another hadith that clarifies more. Prophet ﷺ says this, what? إِنَّمَا تُنصَرُونَ وَتُرْزَقُونَ بِضُعَفَائِكُمْ. The source of your victory and the source of your blessings is coming from the vulnerables among you. The vulnerables among you are actually the reason why your lifestyle is sustained. That's what Islam teaches us. We honor the vulnerables. And whenever you see a society treating the vulnerable elements in it in a lowly and debased and dishonorable way, that's one of the telltale signs of the destruction and demise of a civilization. When it starts treating the vulnerables in a deplorable way, that's a telltale sign of, because what? That's significant, that signifies the rise of oppression. And whenever oppression takes hold of a civilization, it begins to decline. That's what we learn in our deen. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to make us a people of justice and a people of mercy and people of compassion and understanding, and that He gives us blessings and facilitates for us our affairs. Allahumma ameen. Before we close, any questions, comments? Anyone would like to say anything about these concepts, Yaqeen and Tawakkul? Anything at all? Yeah. What are practical steps to build a sense of tawakkul in Allah? So, the big thing in what I said, learn about Allah. Learn about His names and attributes. Learn aqeedah, faith, and that this is a critical part of building the foundation for tawakkul. Other thing besides that is embracing the spiritual path. It's a lifestyle choice, actually, to be honest with you. It's not like one-offs. So it's a life, I'm either material driven or spiritually driven. What's driving me? Where are my priorities, right? Is my priority the bank account and the paycheck? the money, the job, the career? Or is it something that's beyond that, right? So if I shift my priorities to those spiritual things, I'll begin to find that my sense of tawakkul will increase. What am I giving the greatest influence to in my life? That's what's going to also lead to me having yaqeen. What are those biggest influencers in my life? What's driving me? What's affecting me and my choices? Is it Allah? Is it my deen? The more it becomes that, then the more my sense of yaqeen will grow. Yaqeen is something that needs to be nurtured. Tawakkul is something that needs to be nurtured. These are things that are experiential. So part of also what goes into it is I need to have this spiritual sense with what I'm going through in my life. I'm going to need to keep on directing the barometer. It's going to keep on going right, left, and I'm going to need to keep on balancing it and getting it to where it needs to be. So it's going to be this trial and error. That's what I'm trying to say. I am going to get an anxiety for something in my life, right? For example, I'm not married. I'm going to start getting anxieties. Oh my goodness, I'm hitting 30 and I'm still not married and I haven't found somebody and, so on and so forth. Maybe this or maybe that or maybe, I'm going to start thinking of all kinds of anxieties. You get married, okay. Oh, we've been married for 1, 2, 3, and this happens to a lot of people, by the way. And it's not an easy thing. You get married, you want to have a child, right? And you struggle with having a child. And it causes all kinds of anxieties, right? Is there something medically wrong with me or with her? Or is it evil eye? Is it this? Or, when are we going to be blessed with a child? And then, the social pressures that are with that, the families, the friends, where you're not going to have kids. Oh, why can't you have kids? Oh, what's wrong? And the questioning and everything. All these things test your tawakkul. And then same thing with your job. Oh man, I lost my job and I'm trying to find another one. And I tried to apply for this and that. And another, all these they put your tawakkul to the test. And you'll buckle. You will buckle. There's no way that you're not going to buckle when you're dealing with all these types of things, right? But now, after you buckle, how can you get your affairs back in order and get where you need to go? So, building tawakkul and yaqeen are things that need to be nurtured through a trial and error method, experiential dimension. Living iman is much different than talking about it. That's all I'm saying. Wallahu alam. Yeah. Having resilience? What do you mean? So, tawakkul and yaqeen relate to your mindset and your attitude. Resilience relates to what? Your behaviors, right? Are you going to keep pushing through? Are you going to keep trying? Right? So, yeah, sure, that needs, a lot of the characteristics, the spiritual characteristics, need to be nurtured. A lot of them, right? But resilience or murabata is different than tawakkul, right? So some relate to mindset, some relate to behavior, and some relate to other things as well. Yeah. Any other comments, questions before we close? Barakallah feekum. All right, we're going to pause this blessed course, bi'idhnillah, for the rest of the summer, and hopefully we'll be able to resume in September. Please keep me in your dua. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. If you could just please fold up the chairs and tables and put everything where it needs to be. Assalamu alaikum.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي